I ate a lot of sugar. I mean, excessive amounts of sugar. And this went on and on and on up until I was probably in my late 20s. In fact, I don't think I even ever ate a vegetable until I was 21. I hated vegetables. I didn't eat them. The only thing green that I consumed was pistachio ice cream and lime green Jell-O. Okay, so I ate a lot of stuff. My grandmother was an amazing cook, and she would cook a lot of carbs, a lot of cakes, a ton of junk food, and I would consume not just a little bit, but a lot. This went on. I got into sports, wrestling primarily, wrestled through junior high school and college. But what happened, I would go into the season undefeated and then barely make it through the end of the season because I was so tired because my diet was so terrible. I didn't know about nutrition. I had zero data on nutrition. Like, it was really bad. So I don't know how I survived the season, but I ended up just scraping through. So if you see some of my pictures that I'm presenting, you can see me looking very tired and very weak. So if you ever went through a wrestling practice, right, it's intense. But with all that fatigue, I do not know how I made it. I also then went into the military for about 5 years in reserves, and basically pushed myself through basic training, and again, barely made it through the PT test because the combination of stress, poor eating, lack of sleep. I mean, I had some serious blood sugar issues back then. I didn't know it until it finally caught up with me in my late 20s, to the point where I had almost like sand in my eyes. That was a blood sugar issue, dry eyes to the extreme, arthritis, chronic fatigue syndrome, massive blood sugar, mood disorder issues, insomnia. I had a lot of problems. Okay, I mean, a lot of problems, to the point where I became very motivated to get well. So I'd be driving down the street to get help and see this little building over here. Oh, the health house. Oh, let me go there. Maybe they can help me. Come out with a bunch of pills. Oh, let me try this over here. This is a health food store. Let me get some more vitamins. Let me try this vitamin. I was reaching for straws, trying everything. I had a warehouse of vitamins, but I didn't know what I was doing. So it really didn't help until I stumbled on some information that was the right thing, that had to do with blood sugars and insulin, which then I started to change my diet, and I'll never forget this. I remember cutting out cereal for breakfast and having more protein, and I just like, oh my God, I feel so good. Like, my head felt so good. And I'm like, wow, this is really good. So I started to make little changes more and more. I went to a healthcare practitioner that found my liver was really bad, so I started working on that. And then I come home and I tell my wife, honey, I'm quitting the practice. I'm going into nutrition. She goes, what? I said, yeah, I no longer want to do, traditional chiropractic. I'm going to do nutrition. She goes, you don't know anything about it. I says, well, I'm going to learn. So I started to get everything I could, flying around the country, doing postgraduate seminars, getting training and certifications. But the real knowledge came from working one-on-one with so many people over the years. But I just had this intense interest to study obsessively, 24/7 weekends, and I never stopped. So I'm so interested in the body and how it works. I pretty much relearned everything that I learned from school, because in school they don't teach you how to apply it. And from that came up with some great things that I'm going to share with you. Okay? So here's the problem. The current model of healthcare is that you have a symptom and you treat it, and then you manage it, and the symptom goes away, and you continue the medications, and then you just keep going. Okay, so it's basically manage care, manage your symptoms. There's real little evaluation. There's basically just suppressing a symptom, and so all the while the health really doesn't increase. So what's missing in healthcare is the health part, because what happens, you don't actually lose weight and get healthy. You have to get healthy first before you lose weight. And getting healthy is not necessarily just about putting nutrients in the body. That's part of it, but it's all about getting rid of stuff that you don't need. Okay, we'll talk more about that as we go through this. But if you look around, the most common health problems out there nowadays, and I'm just going to list the most common ones: stubborn belly fat, like so many people have that. I mean, it's just everywhere. So that's one thing. That is a health problem. Fatigue. People are tired. They're tired mid-afternoon, like I was. They are tired after they eat. And then we have problems sleeping. They don't wake up in the morning, feel refreshed. They lost that vitality. They can't get the sleep. They're excessively thinking 24/7 when they're trying to sleep. They get up in the middle of the night. They have sleep apnea. They have a lot of sleep issues. And then you have all sorts of mood disorders, anxiety, depression, very common emotional roller coaster stuff. Memory loss. They go in a room, they can't quite remember why they went in there. Their tolerance for stress is low. People get on their nerves easily. I know that's hard to believe, right? But it's very, very common. So these are the common symptoms that most people have. But then it actually shifts to more and more issues that related to blood sugars, like cravings for carbs, can't go a long time without eating, urination at night, cravings for chocolate and chips and salt. So this is what happens. And then down the road, these problems magnified. So you get inflammatory conditions, you get memory issues, dementia, you get a fatty liver, you eventually become a diabetic, you have problems with heart problems, clogged artery, potential heart attack, and stroke. But other than that, you're doing pretty good, right? Other than the high blood pressure and the cholesterol, you're doing fine. So what I want to talk about is cause and effect. If we take all of the conditions out there that are in existence, and if we look at the common thread that goes amongst all these symptoms, both short-term and long-term, there's one thing that comes up that's so common, and that is insulin resistance. Insulin resistance. So I want to talk about that, because if you don't know about this, I would definitely pay attention, because this is the main culprit. This is the cause of all these issues. And if you understand it, you can quickly, rapidly reverse it and improve your health way, way more than anything else. Way more than taking a vitamin, way more than exercise. So it's all based on this one thing, insulin resistance. Now, what is it? Well, most people know insulin is a hormone that's made by the pancreas, and they know that it reduces blood sugars, but that's kind of where it stops. But insulin has a lot of other functions too. But typically at this point, I just want to let you know it reduces blood sugars. So if you eat sugar or carbs, your blood sugar goes up, insulin kicks in there, and it brings it down. Okay, so that's what insulin is. But what happens is the body doesn't like too much insulin, especially if you're consuming too many carbs. An average person consumes about 28 to 31 teaspoons of sugar every single day. I know. Well, normally we should only have, 1 teaspoon, but we can get that from protein and other foods. We don't need to take any sugar. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. So what happens is, as a protective mechanism, as a defense against the toxic effect of insulin and sugar, the body starts to block this insulin, starts to resist it. So what happens, it goes into the cell, and then it's not received properly. So it's kind of like if you talk to someone and they're just talking too much and they won't shut up. They just go on and on and on. You're going to phase them out. But when you stop listening to them, they keep talking. They'll keep talking more and more, right? So that's what happens with insulin resistance. When that insulin, too much communication goes in the cell and it's toxic, the body blocks it, but then there's no feedback to let the pancreas know to turn off the insulin. So the pancreas makes more and more and more insulin. Okay? So that's what happens. So an average person that has insulin resistance has basically 5 to 7 times more insulin than a normal person. So this is not good. So we have the situation where we have a lot of insulin, but it's not working in the body. Not a good combination, okay? Because one of the purposes of insulin is to help fuel the cell. And if the cell is blocked and you starve the cell of fuel, it starts craving things. Okay, it starts craving and it can't do its work, it becomes weak, and it creates a lot of other issues. So what the body does is it tends to recruit sugar from other sources, like stored sugar in the liver, for example. So the body will start using up that sugar. Okay, especially the brain. The brain demands like most of the sugar in the body. It needs a certain amount of sugar. So in the blood, if there's not enough sugar, because there's a problem with insulin, because it's unavailable, the brain suffers first, and that's why people have a lot of cognitive issues. They have two things. One is cognitive issues, which is memory, concentration, focus issues, and then they have actual memory, going in a room and they can't quite remember why they went in there, and then they have mood disorders. Okay, so their mood starts to go down. Grouchy, irritable, angry, anxiety, depression, and even anything with the head, like headaches. That's a blood sugar thing. It's a total blood sugar thing. It's insulin resistance. That's what it is. Now, in the cell, what happens is insulin lowers the sugar, and what it does, it converts it into fat. So, this is really important. So if you've checked out, just check back in right now, because this point is vital. Insulin when it lowers the sugar, it puts the excess into storage. So insulin is all about storing fat. It's a fat storing hormone. It's a dominant fat storing hormone because in the presence of a little bit of insulin, you're going to be storing fat like crazy. Okay? So that's really what happens. So it stores sugar. It actually uses the sugar as fuel, but it also stores it as fat and cholesterol and triglycerides. So most of the cholesterol in someone's body is coming from the glucose. And then also it prevents the burning of fat. So in the presence of insulin, you're not going to burn fat. So it blocks that. So you can't lose weight. So everyone walking around with a gut, they got too much insulin. Okay? So it lowers blood sugars, it stores sugar, it makes fat, it prevents fat burning, and now it does a couple other things. It helps you absorb protein, amino acids. So without that, you start having loss of muscle mass. You have problems with wasting of cartilage and connective tissue and ligaments and tendon problems and loss of discs in your spine. So you start shrinking, sagging skin right here, sagging belly skin. This is inability to build muscle when you work out. It's because the cell can't pull in protein. Also, insulin has a lot to do with absorbing minerals, specifically potassium. I mean, think about if you become deficient in potassium, which most people are because we need so much, we need like almost 5 grams of it. That's 5,000 milligrams every single day. That's a lot. We need that. But to get that, you have to eat large quantities of vegetables, like 7 to 10 cups. No one does that. So on top of insulin resistance, you become so depleted of potassium, you're going to notice leg cramps. You're going to notice fatigue. You're going to notice arrhythmias in the heart. You're going to notice an inability to feel calm because potassium is a physiological relaxer, tranquilizer. It calms things down. Insulin also is like the key that unlocks the door that allows you to absorb other nutrients too, vitamins as well. So you're basically nutrient deprived. So it doesn't matter what vitamins you take, you can't pull it in. So insulin is really important, very important. Now, here's what happens. Check this out. So we start with high insulin, right? And then we go for many years as your body develops insulin resistance with normal blood sugars. So because insulin resistance is compensating for this excess and trying to help you regulate it, and it pumps out more insulin to keep the sugar down, your blood sugars stay normal. So check this out. You have high levels of insulin that then progress for years. Okay, so you have insulin resistance. The body's trying to compensate for that by producing more insulin to drive in the message into the cell and try to keep things going.